Hey, it's Lynn Galadner, and this is the Make Meaning podcast. I am a writer and an entrepreneur, and through decades of writing articles for magazines and newspapers and authoring books, I've wondered what makes life meaningful and what makes work worth doing. In my day job, I help schools and universities, entrepreneurs, and leaders learn how to market and grow their reach. You can learn more about my company, Your People, at yourppl.com. I also am a writing coach, and I teach my signature Find Your Voice Writers Workshop through writingworkshops.com and at makemeaning.org. I help people, organizations, and movements find their voice and gain the confidence to use it. Because everything we do means something. Why waste your moments? You are needed. You can make the world better. And by caring about the people you encounter and the tasks you take on, you get closer every day to finding your unique meaning and living life with purpose. This podcast focuses on all the many ways people make meaning in the mundane. You'll hear stories of courageous people daring to imagine a life they love. If you like what you hear, give us a review on any of the podcast platforms you find this show. There are many ways to fill your life with meaning. Join us at makemeaning.org to learn more. Now, on to the show. During times of crisis, the ability to find a space to take a deep breath is essential. Many of us turn to the outdoors to find that peace and calm. I know I do. Whether it's the forest or the lake, the ocean, or feeling the soft dirt of the garden beneath my fingers, the thriving pulse of nature energizes me and calms me at the same time. One of the ways to interact with nature is by planting and nurturing living things, whether that's an overflowing backyard garden or a pot of basil in the sunniest spot in your apartment. Gardening has been proven to stabilize feelings of anxiety and depression, and it offers an easy sense of achievement when we see the literal fruits of our labors. Jake Neher is senior producer for Detroit Today on 101.9 FM WDET in Detroit. He's also co-host of the weekly series and podcast MichMash, and he's a crazy passionate vegetable gardener. Jake has worked in public radio in Barrow, Alaska, and New York City, from one extreme of this country to the other. During the pandemic, Jake combined his love for radio and his love for gardening in a special series called WDET at Home, where he spoke with co-host Anna Marie Seisling about cooking, keeping kids occupied, and how to start a garden. On the show, they've interviewed expert gardeners and taken live questions from listeners. They inspire conversation about gardening, about community, and what it takes to get through tough times. I'm thrilled to welcome Jake Neher today to the Make Meaning podcast. So I'd like to begin by asking when you knew you were a storyteller. So you've said you like telling other people's stories, especially I'm quoting the stories of people who are often overlooked or ignored. So tell me, when did this begin? How did you get that interest?
Well, first of all, I'm going to say that, I hope you don't regret having me on, because I'm going to get philosophical right off the bat here. But I've been thinking about this idea a lot lately about what it means to be a storyteller. And I've been completely obsessed with this podcast that's by storytelling guru Brian McDonald and his business partner, Jesse Bryan, called You Are a Storyteller. And as you could probably gather, the premise is that everyone is a storyteller. In fact, they say, and I believe this, that stories are literally built into what makes us human. I mean, it's how we communicate. And I think even more important, it's how we connect with people, including and especially people that we don't know, people we've never met, who are no longer living, and many times just completely made up. Anyone who knows me well is sick of me talking about this, but I really do believe, like, if you're a human being, you are a storyteller. Even most professions, I'd argue, include an element of storytelling. Like, even if you're a mathematician, you're dealing with equations and numbers, but if you have to explain to someone why that work matters or how you apply it practically, you're telling stories. So I think that everyone should think of themselves as a professional storyteller, even, no matter what you're doing. But for me specifically, I think it's been ingrained in me since I was really small, since I was a little kid. I probably got it a lot from my parents, and especially my dad, who always has been and still is a very prolific storyteller. He'd make up a new story or two every single night as he was putting me to bed, as a lot of parents would. And to me, they were always so interesting and creative. And as I got older, I don't remember too many specific things that I learned or did in elementary school, but I
Uh-huh.
do remember fifth grade, Mrs. Galeda's class. Shout out Mrs. Galeda,
Love it.
rest in peace. She had an hour every afternoon where we would read a book for a half an hour and then we would write for a half an hour. And
Hmm.
us fifth graders at the time, we were pumped because that was the year we got our first laptops. And I'm putting
Oh.
laptops in quotes because they were just the most like basic word processors, but they could print, which was huge at the time.
Yeah, yeah.
Which was, it was like a game changer. And I would just write and write and write, just completely made up stories. But I
Hmm.
really do think those writing sessions were kind of foundational,
Hmm.
in terms of thinking about what made a good story and then trying to put it into words and structuring it so that it made sense.
I just love that your teacher did that because she was teaching you, first of all, independence
Hmm.
and to trust your own voice, which is so powerful and doesn't happen a lot. But she also was teaching you that, writers read and
Hmm.
and putting that reading first so that you are absorbing other people's voices, the mechanics of storytelling, the differences from one book to the next or one story to the next. And I think a lot of people miss that. I've been a writer my whole life, and when I'm reading a lot, I'm much more energized to write than when I'm just sort of racing, taking the kids places, so busy with everything.
Yeah.
I have to sit and read and let those words penetrate in order for me to get the creative juices flowing. So,
Yeah.
what a brilliant teacher. That's so cool that you
I
did
mean,
that. I love that.
think about trying to be a jazz musician and never having heard jazz before, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like you have to absorb it. Like you have to sort of like breathe it in and like be around it all the time, just to be in the mindset. I think. I mean, you have to have that inspiration, and even more so, it just teaches you in a really sort of easy, I guess easy is the word I would say, but like in a way that just lets you absorb structure and lets you
Hmm.
absorb what is interesting about a story without even thinking about it, right? I mean, you just
Yeah.
know from doing it.
Yeah. It's so interesting. And I'm going to say, so my next question was, how did you then channel this into radio? Because I work in marketing, but I've been a writer all my life and I was a print journalist for a long time before I was in marketing. But I mean, I'm listening to your voice and I'm like, of course you're on radio. You have this great radio voice, but like, what made you want to choose that medium? What pulled you to it?
Well, when I chose it, I did not have a good radio voice, but that's a longer story. Speaking of music, I mean, I was obsessed with music, and that's what got me into radio in the first place. I don't think
Mm.
I was thinking about it in terms of storytelling, although, now as a 33-year-old, I'm like, of course it's storytelling, right? I just went on a whole spiel about that. But
Yeah.
the way I got into radio was I was extremely lucky because my high school had a student radio station,
Hmm.
and even luckier because it was maybe the only high school station, at least at the time, that offered radio broadcasting as an elective class. So,
Ooh.
so my friend and I remember sitting in the cafeteria of our high school, flipping through our class catalog
Hmm.
at the end of freshman year, just trying to figure out what classes to take as sophomores. And there was a class. It was called Fundamentals of Radio Broadcasting. And I was like, I got to take this. Like, I love, maybe I could, see what it's like to host a music show.
Hmm.
And so I took it. I learned the basics of putting a show together and
Hmm.
audio editing. Same
Yep.
software that I use today is
Oh
what,
my
what I learned
gosh.
then when I was 15.
Uh-huh.
And I was hooked. I applied for the radio staff the very next semester. I got in
Uh-huh.
and literally have not looked back since then. So,
Oh, I love it. I love it.
yeah.
So, what have been some of your favorite stories, like people you've interviewed or events you've covered, sort of the deep common humanity that you find to develop your stories? Tell me some of your favorites.
One of my favorites was when I was a reporter for the Michigan Public Radio Network. I was working with Rick Pluta in Lansing, covering the state capitol. I did
Hmm.
that from 2012 to 2016.
Hmm.
I kind of found this weird niche in the Capitol Press Corps as the medical marijuana reporter guy. I don't know how that happened. I swear it was not an interest thing, but it was, but the issues were so interesting to me. People were losing their kids.
Hmm.
People were being thrown in jail, even though they had this card that said they were legal medical marijuana patients,
Hmm.
and that struck me. So one of the stories that I did was about a family who their children were taken away because they had a compound that was found in their house. The mother in the family was having a medical emergency. The medical staff showed up with police. The police decided to search the house while they were there. They happened to just see this resin while they were there, took it to the state lab, and the lab concluded that it was possible, and that's the key word, possible, that the substance was made in a lab. And I'm not going to try to get too technical here, but there was, at least at the time, I'm not sure if it's still true, a difference in state law where a substance that came from a plant was considered okay, or at least less illegal than a substance that was made in a factory, basically in a lab. And every expert I talked to said there's no way that this was made in a lab in the first place, but also this is really unfair and they're going to lose their kid. So anyway, the story it just sort of spiraled. It got into all these things about the state police crime lab and all of there was a director who left because he was feeling pressure from prosecutors to make certain decisions. But at the core of the story was this family who simply was, they had a medical marijuana card. They were just trying to be, responsible patients and responsible parents. And they were very much in trouble of losing their child. And in the end, after the story came out, their child, the state reversed course and they did not lose their child. So,
good. Oh my gosh.
So that was one that's really stuck with me for a long time, because it was an intersection of all of these issues that people weren't aware of at the time, that were really technical and really policy based. But I think people could attach to it because it was such a compelling human story at the same time.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. So many things going on there, but I see that deep common humanity because this fear of losing your kid, the nuances of legal language and the unfairness of it, and also being able to advocate for yourself or not. I mean, there's so many stories in that. So very cool. That's awesome.
I probably should have made them much longer. I should have, if podcasts were a bigger thing back then, I probably would have made it into a podcast because there were so many things to pick apart and I had to try to fit them all in a 4-minute story, but I did my best.
Could have been a series, like an 8-episode podcast or something.
Right.
Cool. Yep. Well, you never know. You can always go back. Where are they now? How's the kid doing now?
It's a good question.
All right. So let's put a pin in the journalistic line of questioning for a minute. And I want to pivot to your gardening obsession. Tell me where that came from and what you most enjoy growing.
So, I think gardening has always been in the back of my head, even when I was in college. Living in apartments, it's tough to, have a garden. But I know I was really idealistic when I was in college. I was thinking, I need to learn how to garden so I'm more self-sufficient and all these things. And I could talk more about how my opinions on that have changed a 180 since then, but I'll save that.
Okay.
But ever since my entire, ever since we graduated from college, my wife and I, we went to Central Michigan together. And then we moved up to Barrow, Alaska, which was the first place that I lived right after college. And even then, in a place where you literally cannot have a garden. I mean, the ground is permafrost. It's, there is literally no daylight for 2 months out of the year in the winter. The shortest growing season in America. We bought an arrow garden, like a little hydroponic thing where you could buy, grow little herbs and things like that. And it sort of very slowly grew, pun intended, from there. That the next year we moved to New York. All we had was just a little fire escape, but we bought, a few plants to put out on the fire escape, which I thought was really cool. We got a tomato that was probably about the size of a golf ball. And, a lot of failure for a very long time, lots of patio gardens, a lot of deck kind of small things. And then in the house that we live in now, we were looking around Royal Oak where we live. And this was the only house that had an extra deep lot. Anyone who knows Royal Oak knows that, small lots, most of the place, most of Royal Oak. And this one had a big backyard, and we went in the back and there were 8 raised beds that were built in this little like very small section of the whole neighborhood is feels like it's all shaded except for
Uh-huh.
this one little spot in this backyard right
Oh,
over these 8 raised beds.
uh-huh.
And immediately I'm like, I'm sold. Like, that like this is something that I want to take on. Like
Hmm.
I've always wanted to do it right. I've just never had the space.
Yeah.
So for the last 3 years since we've been in this house, that's when the interest became an obsession and
Uh-huh.
became a maybe at times, too much of an obsession. But in terms of my favorite things to grow, it sort of changes every year. I feel like every year there's something different.
Hmm.
Tomatoes are very like instantly gratifying, right? Because
Yeah.
they're very prolific and,
Yeah.
uh, you know, um, but one of my favorite things is last year we grew sugar pie pumpkins, like,
Ooh.
little small pumpkins.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know that we had the space to do it or anything. I just sort of like threw a couple seeds in the ground and was like, maybe this will work.
Uh-huh.
And we only got 2 sugar pie pumpkins. It was
Uh-huh.
not, a great harvest, but that's enough to make a pie. And we made a
Yeah.
pie and it
That
was,
is so
it
cool.
was
Oh
great.
my gosh. Yeah, you know what? I planted watermelon this year, and I mean, I have an enclosed little garden, and as I told you at the beginning of the episode, it's very flat and flooded recently with all the torrential rains. But I noticed today there are two marble-sized melons
Ooh,
growing, and I'm
nice.
just so excited. Like I can't wait to see them get bigger. So, like, who
Yeah.
knew? You know, we just
Yeah.
tried. You know.
I was just thinking that this is the year for me of the mini cantaloupe. That's what's doing really well for me this year for some
Huh.
reason. And it's from seeds that I saved from 2 years ago, which made me even more happy about it. But we've got all like probably a dozen small they're called Minnesota midget cantaloupes.
Uh-huh.
And we have like 12 of them growing, and one of them's like the size of a softball already. I'm really excited for that.
Oh, that's awesome. Very, very cool. I want pictures when they're all
Yeah,
ripe. So I want to see that.
absolutely.
Okay, so during the pandemic, you created a special series on WDET called At Home with your co-host Anna Marie Seisling. So tell me a little bit about the series and what inspired it.
I think that when we thought about what people wanted to listen to during the pandemic, there were the obvious things, right? There were, up to date information about the virus, how it was spreading, how to protect yourself, what the government was doing, that sort of thing.
Hmm.
But even beyond that, everyone was suddenly home, right? Like
Yeah.
suddenly we weren't at the office, we weren't doing things like we had all these opportunities to do things that we never had time for before. A
Hmm.
lot of people were cooking, a lot of people were getting into bread making, like all these things,
Hmm.
and so I think it was our program director, Joan Isabella, said, maybe it's worth, because of course I'm like pushing the gardening thing, right? I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
like we'd love to I'd love to talk gardening in some form somehow. And she's like, maybe we could run with that. Maybe there are a couple things that we could do.
Uh-huh.
Ann DeLisi, the music host at our station, was
Yeah.
doing a cooking segment.
Hmm.
And so she's like, let's put these things together. Let's
Hmm.
do a series of shows where it's like things that we can do at home. And
Yeah.
my co-producer on Detroit Today, which is the show that I'm the senior producer on at WDET,
Yeah.
Anna Marie Seisling,
Hmm.
she is even more into gardening than I am. I mean, she and her partner have like a whole side lot now that they're
Mm.
gardening in Detroit, and just
Wow.
like really, really, doing it up right. And so we were both like, oh, this is something we sink our teeth into. And we did 2 shows. We had a mix of gardening experts and people who are just well known
Hmm.
on YouTube and things like that for gardening,
Hmm.
to just, share their thoughts, and lots of listeners calling up and saying, hey, I don't know how to grow blueberries. How do I grow blueberries? And they would be like, well, you have to have acidic soil and all these things, so it was very informational, but it was also really fun. I'm so glad we did that.
That is super cool. So tell me about how you garden. Like, is this a solitary pursuit or do you bring your kids into it? Or is this something you and your wife share? Tell me a little bit about the sort of community that's grown up around your gardening.
Oh yeah, that's a good way to put it. I mean, everyone in the house has a role. I'm the one that is like completely obsessed. So
Mhm.
I start just trays and trays of seeds in the spring and in the winter, actually,
Mm-hmm.
starting in February. And so I'm planting out usually like 7 of the 8 beds.
Mm-hmm.
My wife takes the lead on one of the beds, which is our cut flower bed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so that's like her territory right there.
Uh-huh.
But the kids are always in the garden. I mean, that's one of my absolute favorite things about having a garden, especially one of the size that we're, so lucky to have.
Yeah.
They can just walk around and explore and pick things off of vines as long as it's ripe, which is
Mm-hmm.
sometimes a struggle. But yeah, I mean, my son Joshua, who's my 6-year-old, is like, he has his tomato plant, right? His name is Jerry, the tomato plant, by the way. And that's his to take care of, right? So
Uh-huh.
it's up to him to make sure that it's growing and healthy. And my 2-year-old now, Sammy,
Mm-hmm.
is just loves harvesting, as you can
Mm.
imagine. He's always asking me for peas and carrots. He loves
Uh-huh.
pulling carrots out of the ground
Uh-huh.
and eating them. And so it's just amazing to watch my kids explore this thing that I've grown. I mean, it's just like the greatest thing for a dad.
It's really cool because, my kids are all teenagers now, but when they were little, we would do activities that just basically were being outside and sort of getting to know nature. We would go to like the blueberry orchard or,
Mm-hmm.
pick apples in the fall. And we would go out to Blake's actually, way out in Macomb County, and we would pick everything. That we'd pick broccoli, we'd pick tomatoes, we'd pick pumpkins, and
Yeah.
they will try all kinds of vegetables. They always have
Yeah.
because their hands are on it. And so it's like, well, why not eat this? And so it's just a great thing to do. And it's a great activity. It's just, yeah, teaches them.
Absolutely. I mean, if you want and I think that I'm trying to remember who said this. Um, I believe his name is Rob Finley.
Mhm.
He's out in Los Angeles. He has the greatest TED Talk on gardening of all time, by the way.
Okay.
But Ron Finley, sorry, Ron
Run.
Finley.
Okay.
And he's like, if you want a kid to eat kale,
Yeah.
have him grow kale.
Yeah.
He'll eat it, right?
Yeah.
He or she
Yeah.
will try it. If they grow it, they'll try it, right? Which is
Yeah.
more than you can say if you just plop it on a plate in front of them.
Absolutely.
My kids, Sammy, my 2-year-old, again, he asked me for kale, and
Mhm.
I'll go over and get it. And sometimes I'll hand the leaf to him, and he'll refuse to eat it. But at least he knows what it is, and
Yep.
sometimes he'll eat it and he'll enjoy it. And it's a good introduction too, because I will, I think it's pretty well known for most home gardeners that the taste is so much better
Yeah. Yeah.
from you just pick it and it's so fresh. and
Oh yeah.
and the way that we buy produce right now, it's like if you buy a tomato, is pick green, right? Because they have
Yeah.
to let it ripen while it's not in root. So
Right. Right.
you can't beat the taste of homegrown, and so kids will like it more because it just tastes better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're reminding me of a poet I studied with many years ago at the University of Iowa Summer Writers Workshop, Michael Carey. And he had 4 kids. He had a farm and he's a poet. And he had each child choose a tree that they wanted to plant on the property. And then it was their responsibility. And so whether it lived or died, thrived or suffered, it was in their hands. And
Hmm.
in this book, I can't remember the title of his book. I'll put it in the show notes, but he wrote poems for each letter in the Gaelic alphabet. His family
Wow.
was Irish, and so one, I forget what letter it was, but there was birch tree was what he ascribed to it, and one of his daughters chose a birch, and he's like, they don't do well in Iowa. This is pretty far south, but if you want it, that's fine. And it really did well because
Wow.
she gave it her love and attention. This was her thing to nurture. And it did well. I mean, it was an amazing poem. So I'll put that in the
Yeah.
show notes and I'll send it to you so you can see it. But
That is the first time anyone has ever compared me to a poet, so I
ah,
appreciate
there you go. You never know. You never know.
that.
All kinds of forms and evolutions.
Yeah.
So in Detroit, are you seeing like community gardens really grow and expand? How is gardening changing the landscape or the sense of ownership in the city? What do you see there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go back to Ron Finley here, because one of the things he says is that gardening is a revolutionary act
Mm,
in a world where we depend so much, and this is so obvious after the pandemic, in
Mhm.
a world where supply chains have broken down, we depend on these things to get the food that we need, and especially for communities that are oppressed and that have traditionally been left out of fresh food
Mhm.
and even just the ability to have control and freedom over their own choices over food.
Mhm.
Gardening is revolutionary, and I
Yeah.
think that it is a sentiment that has only grown, as far as I can tell, in Detroit. I know that there's, we now have a vineyard in Detroit, of all
Mm.
things, something that you would never think of if you were driving down the road in Detroit to expect to see a vineyard. But
Uh-huh.
yeah, I think that, and especially because now there's this sense of, you know, a lot of neighborhoods, a lot of houses have come down. People are able to, get side lots. As I mentioned, my
Mhm.
co-producer Anna has a side
Mhm.
lot that she gardens in.
Mhm.
There's just more opportunity, I think, to do that kind of thing. I think, as someone who came of age as a reporter in Detroit, probably 10 years ago,
Mhm.
there was almost an oversaturation of stories about urban gardening and like, let's
Yeah.
just turn Detroit into a giant farm, right? But which, I think that there is something to be said for the potential, but
Mhm.
I think that what was ignored in a lot of those stories was really about reclaiming ownership, like you said,
Mhm.
over land and over the your own food security and your own ability to just produce something that could both nourish you physically and otherwise. So
Absolutely.
I think that there's so many wonderful stories around that. Again, my co-producer Anna has a whole series in WDET right now called Rooted, where
Uh-huh.
she takes really sort of individual looks at a lot of those things that are happening. Highly recommend that series. Very cool.
Cool. Well, we will definitely put all of that in the show notes, I promise. I just have a couple more questions for you. And
Sure.
so, first, I'd like to hear about your passion for dirt. So, how do you cultivate a healthy soil that grows really robust plants? Talk to me about dirt.
Well, this is like, okay, I'm going to get philosophical again. So I think one of the coolest things about gardening is that you learn to appreciate things that you didn't appreciate before, right? Like
Hmm.
if you could think of like like a thing in society that we is synonymous with devalued or like, just valueless.
Uh-huh.
It's dirt, right?
Oh,
You're
yeah.
dirt poor. You're, like dirt is considered this. It's dirty. Like, well, who wants it, right?
Right, right.
But as a gardener, you're like, no, dirt is everything. It's literally everything. And sorry to be the millennial that uses literally too much, but I mean, that's how I feel. So, you get into composting, which I have done. We
Hmm.
have a tumbler again that we also inherited from the
Hmm.
previous owners of the house.
Hmm.
And uh, the process of taking this stuff, the leaves that fall in the fall, in the
Hmm.
autumn, and that everyone sweeps out to the curb and just throws away, right?
Right.
And you take it, you chop it up, you put it in your compost pile, and the grass clippings that people throw away, all these things, you put those things together, you mix them, and you wait. They, for one thing, amazing. They start to heat up super hot, which is so
Mm.
cool.
Yeah.
It's like you don't think of how that happens, but it's literally microbes
Uh-huh.
breaking this stuff down,
Huh.
and these things that you're going to throw away otherwise become this amazing soil that you can put right out on your beds,
Hmm.
and that feed your plants, which then feed you.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's one of those really eye-opening things to me
Yeah.
that and another shout out here. Charles Dowding
Hmm.
is a really well-known no dig gardener in
Hmm.
England who
Okay.
is sort of the godfather of no dig, and his
Uh-huh.
whole thing is about um, instead of tilling the soil, instead of like working all this stuff up and breaking the structure of the soil and disturbing the microbes and all, like the whole environment that lives, the whole ecosystem in the soil,
Mm-hmm.
leave it alone, put compost on top, and you'll
Mm-hmm.
be amazed by the results. And the
Hmm.
reason for that, it's not really as much about the compost. It's like the whole idea is, instead of feeding your plants with fertilizers and things like that, which
Mm-hmm.
I'm not opposed to, but
Mm-hmm.
um, feed the soil, right?
Yeah.
Feed
Yeah.
the ecosystem, feed all the things that exist in there that
Uh-huh.
make it this like amazing thing.
Uh-huh.
Um, there's fungus networks in the soil that go miles and miles, like all the way around the
Hmm.
continent, basically, that are what attach the nutrients to your plants in the
Hmm.
roots.
Yeah.
And it's like mind blowing to me. It's like you think of this thing that you just walk on and tread on all day long
Mm-hmm.
as something completely different, as something that is miraculous in many
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah.
So that is one of the things that has really uh, been amazing to me. Again, instead of feeding plants, feed your soil, and
Uh-huh.
it will give back to you. I mean, that's just the
Yeah.
coolest thing.
Awesome. Do you also do like vegetable scraps and things like that in your compost?
Yeah,
Do you do eggshells?
I do. In fact,
Okay.
I have gotten into actually taking, what is it called? Those things that you sort of like pound, like you
A
make,
mallet?
yeah,
Yeah.
something like that. It's
Uh-huh.
or like it's like a grist. I don't remember. Anyway, it's
Okay.
like, really, really working the eggshells down so that
Oh,
they're really tiny, so that they'll break
huh.
down a lot faster. But they're wonderful for the compost pile.
Okay.
I would highly recommend any gardener. Don't throw the eggshells away. Throw
Okay.
those in your compost, and
Okay.
that'll, you'll get calcium. You'll get all these things that are really great for your plants.
Awesome. 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 Okay. So what tips do you have for listeners who want to try gardening? Where do they begin?
I would say it depends on what you've got available to you. Like I said, when I started, I had literally no actual outside space available
Uh-huh.
in the most harsh climate in America.
Mm-hmm.
But so if I can start there, you can start. I guarantee it.
Yeah.
I would say start, it's probably not a bad idea to start small, especially
Mm-hmm.
if you're sort of not sure if
Mm-hmm.
it's something that you want to continue doing.
Mm-hmm.
But even if all you have is a windowsill, put a couple plants, go out,
Mm-hmm.
even just buy a couple of seedlings.
Sure.
Try to find a really sunny southern exposure if you can,
Mm-hmm.
and see what happens.
Okay.
Especially herbs
Okay.
are a great thing to start with, because you can grow them inside without too much trouble.
Okay.
And if you have some space outside, you don't have to do too much. Just get a
Mm-hmm.
little potting soil, just plant one seed, and see what happens. I guarantee you're gonna be really invested in that plant really quickly.
That's
And
cool.
if you want to start on a bigger scale, I do not discourage that. I really dove in head first once we had this ability to go bigger.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, I'd say grow a bunch of stuff if you can,
Mm-hmm.
and see how you do. And see what you like,
Mm-hmm.
because you're not going to like every plant that you grow.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to get great results, and sometimes they're even really experienced gardeners. There's like this one plant that they just cannot get to produce. So
Mm-hmm.
don't feel bad if it doesn't work out. Just see what is the most gratifying for you, and keep going from there.
Awesome. That's great advice. So, on this show, we always focus on how people find meaning in work and purpose in life. And I'm personally fascinated with how people find their voice. So, I would like to close by asking you about what you would say is your path to finding purpose or finding your voice, and what advice you might offer our listeners for going in search of theirs.
I mean, for me, it's always a continuation, right? I mean, it's that's something that you never stop on the path and say, this is my voice. This is what I'm where I am and where I will be. But I will say that the most important thing for me has been just trying to broaden my horizons. I know that that's a little bit cliche, but listening to people talk, meeting people, watching YouTube videos of, people just talking about their lives, listening to the radio.
Mm-hmm.
I get so much from other people and what they find meaning in. So, which I think is just so great for this podcast. I think is exactly what you do, right?
Yeah.
It is learning what people are passionate about, and when you connect with that, when you connect with another person and the stories that they're telling, to go full circle here,
Yeah.
and you and you're like, wow, like that really hits me,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, this person is very passionate about this thing, that now I'm really interested in that. Let's see where it goes. I think that's sort of what set me on a lot of those paths. But
Yeah.
the things that bring me the most meaning in my daily life are being a dad, as
Mm-hmm.
most parents know. That is a huge thing.
Mm-hmm.
But also just just trying to express in as many ways possible the things that I'm feeling passionate about, and doing it in an unabashed way, like I've been
Mm-hmm.
doing for this entire interview. And not being. And here's maybe the biggest thing for me is that if there's something that you find meaning in and something that you're passionate about, uh, don't feel bad about that,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like be a geek, be a nerd. I have so embraced my nerdiness in my 30s, that because it's what I connect with other people about. When people are really passionate and nerdy about something, I think that that's just the most amazing thing, because that's what is making them get through the day and really find meaning in life. And so that's my spiel.
Well, all the best people are nerds. And so it's a great thing. Do it, nerd out. I love it. Jake Neher, I have so loved having you on the Make Meaning podcast. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Lynn. I really appreciate you having me on.
Thanks for listening to the Make Meaning podcast with Lynn Galadner. You can find us wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. If you like what you've heard here, join us over at makemeaning.org to discover how you can add more meaning to your life. And hey, if you like our conversations, please subscribe and share this episode with the meaningful people in your world.